So as I said, we all, act according to our nature, and my parents were quite disappointed that I hadn't gone back to college. So I seriously considered going back to college. I was very close to Hridayananda Maharaj. Even when I was a brahmachari at the Los Angeles airport, he lived in Los Angeles at the time, and every day practically, after distributing books at the airport, we would go back to the ashram, get dressed, and then drive to Hridayananda Maharaj's home, and hear him read the Chaitanya Bhagavat with us, or just speak about Western philosophy and how it relates. He's a brilliant mind. And he had just gone back to Harvard University, and he was stressing the importance about yukta vairagya and acting according to our nature, and how, if one can and should use modern education, modern degrees in the service of Lord Chaitanya to gain credibility for Lord Chaitanya's movement, just as, well, maybe 500 years ago, a danda, really gained you a lot of respectability. So I had this desire to go back to university. I even spoke about it with my mom. She was delighted. She even kissed Hridayananda Maharaj on the cheek, which you don't really do to a sannyasi, but she didn't know, right? But somehow or other, I was still traveling with Maharaj, with Bhakti Charu Maharaj, and then I got an opportunity to be the lead singer of the then rock reggae band called, or maybe reggae band more than rock, Village of Peace in Poland with Indra Swami, which was a band that had been already touring for about 3-4 years with Indra Swami's Polish tour.
With Maharaj before.
I had never met Indra Swami, but I knew the bass player of the band, who was this French guru Kuli who had met in New Mayapur, and we had spoken music together, and he loved Bob Marley, and I did too, and he was a bass player, and so he had been going to the Polish tour every summer for years. So he sent me an email, this was at the beginning of emails in 2003, saying, hey, we need a singer for Village of Peace because Sri Prahlad is no longer a singer, do you want to join us? And I was like, yeah, because I had been a big fan of Raghunath Prabhu and the band Shelter. This Wisdom of the Sages? Everybody knows Wisdom of the Sages. It's actually one of the most popular podcasts on spirituality in the world today, hosted by Raghunath Prabhu and Kostuba. Raghunath, before he became a yoga teacher, one of the top 20 influential yoga teachers in America, he was a very influential punk rock musician in a band called Shelter. And in the late 80s, early 90s, he made hundreds and hundreds of, they made so much outreach work. They convinced so many young people to become devotees. It was amazing. Even Radhanath Swami at one point had said, yeah, what Shelter is doing, nobody else in North America is doing in terms of outreach, success. So why am I speaking about? Oh, so I was a big fan, and I used to listen to their music, even though I was a brahmacharya. I remember one day we went to the Roxy Theater, which is a famous, legendary venue for rock concerts on Sunset Boulevard in West Hollywood, where all the biggest names, debuted, from Jimi Hendrix to The Doors to, the most recent rock bands. And Shelter played there. And I remember I went with a friend called Greg, and I was a brahmachari, dressed in saffron, 22-year-old, full of testosterone and passion. And these rock concerts, these punk rock concerts, there's a mosh pit where you push against each other like crazy. And I remember dressed in dhoti and saffron, I went right in the middle, and I was just screaming, revolution, revolution, and pushing everybody. And he even told me, my friend, that afterwards, I was everybody had sort of moved out, and I was still left in the middle, in my own world, screaming revolution. Everyone was looking at me like this. That's what he says, I don't know. But anyway, so I was a big fan of Shelter, and so when I had met people at the airport all the time who said, yeah, I'll take a book because I'm a fan of Shelter. Nationwide effect of the preaching of this band. It's when I got this opportunity to, stop being the menial servant of the guru who, planchas, who irons the spiritual teacher's robes and carries the luggage, to being, a rock star for Krishna in Poland. Why not, right? So Bhakti Charu Maharaj said, yeah, go. So I went, and then from one day to the other, all of a sudden I'm in Poland, ex-Union, ex-Russia, ex-communist regime. So you still have a lot of, it's the Eastern European, sort of the ex-communist bloc, Tons of devotees, huge kirtans. Indra Swami was very, very attractive, and who also was born in California like me, and who spent 20 years in France. So we hit up a rapport, and I have to learn these songs all of a sudden because their first show is in 5 days, and so we did that first performance where we basically, learned all the songs of Village of Peace, and And so I did that for about 4 years every summer, and we built our own band called 18 Days, and it became a little bit more sort of punk, not punk, a little bit more rock with our own lyrics, our own songs.
Was it recorded at 18 Days?
Yeah, we have a live concert, an album. And then when it was not summer, I would spend the time in Paris, and when I basically kind of living off the government money, so that I could do what's called métro yoga, which is a friend of mine, Gadadhar Priya and Bhaktin Sarah, we would go into the Paris subway, and have a whole routine where we'd like go into a train and like scream really, or speak really loud, "Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, we are the Metro Yoga team here at your service. You haven't done your yoga yet. It's already 7 p.m. But have no fear. We are here to help you. You don't have to do any exercises. It's free. All you have to do is listen to these mantras sung with very little professionalism, but with a lot of heart. Ladies and gentlemen, Metro Yoga." And then we'd kick into like a kirtan. And people were like looking at us like, and I'd go in there with a tie, and a sports jacket, to make it look very sort of contemporary. And then about 3 stops down, we would say to people like, "Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going off now. Please do not give us any money. Please do not follow us. Go home. But please, if you can, just give us a little round of applause." And like these hardcore, cynical Parisians would applaud us as we left and waved them goodbye. Before we read a few verses from the Gita, and then went into another train as it came in and did, "Hello, ladies and gentlemen," and did the same mantra. We did that like 3-4 hours a day in Paris. Metro, and Sarah would pass out vegetarian, prasadam cookies to people. So that was really fun. But then that intellectual thing, was still kicking. Hridaya Maharaj was still like kind of pushing me to go back to college. And at one point I said, "You know what? I want to go back to college. I want to get a degree for Krishna." So finally in 2010, I went to the University of California at Santa Barbara, and I finished a Bachelor's of Art in Religious Studies, and I did my thesis actually on Prabhupada. What was it? Sort of the cultural, what fascinated me, and that's why I got involved with this Krishna West project, is this whole issue of cultural adaptation, time, place, and circumstance. And so, and then I got admitted to Oxford somehow. Krishna's mercy. I had refused to go to Oxford about 5 years before, when I had a chance to go, and I was considering it. My mom, through her contact, had basically opened the back door to go to Oxford at the undergraduate level, but I had said no to continue traveling with Bhakti Charu Maharaj, and this time I feel like Krishna himself opened the door for me to go get a master's at Oxford. And my thesis there was on Prabhupada and Kirtan. So it was really fun. It was also on Christianity and reincarnation, and Christianity and vegetarianism, but my main paper was on Prabhupada and Kirtan. So I had a good time just researching everything Prabhupada ever said on Kirtan, and what did he introduce that was different from the tradition, what did he keep that was the same as the tradition. So that was really fun. And since then I got involved with this Krishna West project, and I'm still doing as many kirtans as I can, and since a few years I have more of an online presence with a French YouTube channel, an English YouTube channel, a French podcast, kind of following in the footsteps of Wisdom of the Sages. And that's about it with my story. So I thank you for hearing, and if you haven't become a devotee of Krishna yet, consider it and chant Hare Krishna. And if you are already, well, thank you for listening, and Hare Krishna.
Any future plans? I was going to ask you something about
future plans.
You also did a recording with Amala Bhakta Prabhu in the distribution, right?
Yeah, I did a few audiobook recordings, including one where Amala Bhakta Swami, who's a audiobook recorder when it was on cassette tapes back then, we did a sort of a joint recording of the famous quotes of Prabhupada about the importance in his eyes of book distribution. So that's available on my YouTube channel. And my plans for the future, somehow I want to help, the spreading of Krishna consciousness in whatever way I can. In the West, because I'm a Westerner, I have a Western body. In France also, that's quite close to my heart, because I'm also French, for better or for worse. And let's see what Krishna arranges with your blessings.